Okay, so this is video 3 for soil and agriculture. This is the second part of that first PowerPoint, the soil PowerPoint that I showed you. And then this video, so that was video 1. Video 2 was an agriculture PowerPoint that was totally different, and this is the rest of the soil and agriculture PowerPoint. A lot of this information I'm going to skip through pretty fast because it was covered in video 2, but I really like both PowerPoints and I couldn't decide which I wanted to use, so we're just going to combine them so you guys have both resources. So we're going to kind of flip through a lot of this pretty fast. 17% of all commercial energy is from agriculture, and this was amazing, and this goes back to that fooding, 2,400 kilometers from farm to plate for most food, which is just crazy. So that's where they were saying to buy locally is such a huge, not only savings in money for you, but better for the environment. So this takes a look at the different types of agriculture, looking at low input. Polyculture is a much better concept because polyculture has you growing lots of different varieties in one field, which is a much better plan. So that includes that increases diversity, makes better for the environment, better use of nitrogen cycle, so on and so forth. So you see the different types of that here. We've talked about erosion a lot already. We know all this stuff. Make sure you guys flip through and understand this. Different types of erosion. So these are really good vocab words that you guys need to make sure you know. It's all very self-explanatory. Let me know if you guys are stuck on any of this. Remember that erosion focuses specifically on the topsoil. It doesn't impact anything underneath it. So we're looking at erosion in the cropland. Huge problem. There are a lot of problems in a lot of places, obviously. We are in the U.S. cutting it down because of this Food Security Act in 1985. Farmers get a subsidy for taking that land out of production and replanting it with better plants. So essentially giving it a break for 10 to 15 years. So that has helped. More types of erosion, water erosion, the formation of gullies from water erosion, wind erosion, desertification, loss of water, exactly what it sounds like. We've talked about this before. We've talked about salinization before. This is increase in minerals because you don't have that water to cycle through it to remove those mineral layers. Water logging is too much water. So you see that not in the topsoil necessarily, but underneath that topsoil layer. So salinization, how you prevent it, how you clean up from it. So before and after to work on salinization. Make sure, this is what I'm saying, guys. This is the stuff to look at to make sure can list off, especially for like FRQ questions. Is if there's a how do you repair something? How do you fix something? And it's just pure memorization. These are the options that I have to fix if something is wrong with the soil. If this is wrong with it, salinization is wrong with it, this is how I fix it, this is how I prevent it. This happens a lot in Texas. You see this cracking quite a bit, and with a really clay-like soil. Okay, so looking at erosion control, this is also in your textbook. Shelter belts can work on that, where you have the trees, this tree thing around it that prevents erosion. Minimum tillage. Okay, so modern farm machinery has helped a lot, working with less disturbance to the soil, which is really good. So you see different types of modern farming practices, the terracing, contour farming, the strip cropping. Make sure that you're going through and understanding all of these. You guys can pause this video and read through and make sure you get it. Make sure you know each one of these. Cover cropping or alley cropping, strips or alleys between trees, and then irrigation techniques, conventional, gravity flow, drip, floodplain. So make sure you understand the different types of irrigation. So soil nutrients, two types, macronutrients and micronutrients. The macronutrients you can see, the micronutrients, or not necessarily you can see, I'm sorry, but larger atomic structure, the micronutrients, smaller atomic structure. And therefore, you need them in much smaller amounts. Okay, fertilizers. Organic, I mean, it's what you would expect. Think common sense. Don't make this harder than it has to. Organic fertilizers, animal manure, crop residue, bone meal, compost. All the stuff, the organic leftover food or animal waste that you can put onto crops to put those nutrients back into the ground. The inorganic is all man-made chemical compounds. So obviously organic would be best, but it's expensive, a lot of work to cart that around and dump that everywhere. Benefits to the inorganic, we know the exact competition, we know that they will dissolve right away, so therefore we know that the plants will be able to use the minerals right away. The cost to inorganic is that the benefit to them is gone quickly. It leaches away really fast. Pollutes the water, so the plant isn't necessarily getting all the nutrients that you're intending it to. It's getting some of them and the rest are getting washed downstream, whereas a big old piece of animal manure would stay there longer and therefore those nutrients would remain where you intended them to remain. Hydroponics, I mentioned in the last one, is this brand new system of growing plants in fertilized water. It's pretty awesome. It reduces the amount of water you need by like 90%, so irrigation and stuff would be significantly less. It reduces the land area that you need. It reduces the nutrients that you need. And then the big downside to hydroponics is that you need to add nutrients to it. You need to have fertilized water. They're now coming up with this aquaponics, where you actually grow two crops, essentially. You grow animal and plant crops. So you have this whole system going where you grow the plants in the water, and then you also grow fish in the water. And there's lots of different setups to do this. But the fish grow and poop in the water, and then the plants get the nutrients from the poop, and then they grow, and then the plants are putting oxygen back into the water, so the fish get oxygen to eat. A lot of the times the fish will eat some of the plants, so feeding is less. So it's this whole cycle thing that's very natural. Does not take a lot of materials, does not take a lot of input from humans, and it's a fantastic way. You can do this in your backyard and end up growing, tilapia, catfish, trout that you can eat on your dinner table. It's really, really cool. So definite option there, and very much a growing industry is the aquaponics. It's combining the best of both worlds, the hydroponics and the aquaculture, and putting them together and taking, that removes all the negatives and puts in all the positives. Okay, so looking at hydroponics, more about fertilizers. Green Revolution, I wanted to make sure that I focused on 1940s to 1970s. It looked at research and development of more high-yield farming techniques, and they talked about this a lot in the Food Inc., was making it all of a sudden those monoculture plants, lots of fertilizer, lots of pesticide, lots of water, to increase the number of crops, to make everything bigger and better on less land. How do you do that? It's like they were saying about the chickens. If I can grow a chicken to harvest in 3 months, why would I do it in 6 months? Well, the argument that the chicken may not be as healthy, maybe not be able to stand up because it's not strong enough, because it hasn't grown long enough. Those are those arguments that people are having. Okay, so the Green Revolution's environmental impact, more crops per unit of land, overall has had kind of a negative impact, simply because it's had a very detrimental effect on the environment. So, the food impact was great. There's tons more food available really fast. Everybody was like, oh, this is awesome. Except now that monoculture and the long-term impacts of really working the land so hard with one species, all of that type of thing is making itself known. So again, this is listing all that. You can read through and talk about that. Same thing in different words. Same thing in different words. Don't go there. Just run it. This is looking through. This is kind of summarizing everything. So I really, really like this slide. Look through at all of the different aspects that we've talked about for food production and what's going on right now. And then the gene splicing, they talked about that in Food Inc., so make sure you flip through this and understand this. Artificial selection and genetic engineering, the formation of GMOs, Hugely controversial right now. Food Inc. was very much against it. Personal opinion, I'm against it as well, but it's really hard to get away from right now. So you kind of have to figure out how you feel about that. So this is a good slide that shows you, objectively the pluses and the negatives to GMOs, to using GMOs. So again, make sure you can list off a whole bunch of this stuff for the GMOs and give specific examples in the case of test questions, especially FRQs. Okay, so the feedlots we talked a lot about, or you guys saw good examples of in Food Inc. It's crazy. Again, advantages and disadvantages, it's going to show you stuff. Shellfish and fish, this is an aquaculture thing, and again, this goes back to that hydroponics that I was just talking about. Wild-caught species are leveling off or declining. A lot of them we're getting, I wouldn't say a lot, some of them we're getting under control, some fisheries, some are not. We'll talk about that a lot when we eat seafood. Aquaculture is growing by leaps and bounds. The problem with aquaculture, or I'm jumping ahead. So regular fishing industry is a struggling business right now. A lot of them are going out of business. There's huge government subsidies, which is continuing, impacting overfishing. Okay, so then aquaculture seemed like a great plan at first, but has some really, really serious drawbacks. I don't approve of it, or I should take that back. I don't approve of a lot of it. There are some ways to do it that works really well. For example, I like fish ranching as opposed to fish farming. Fish farming in saltwater species is becoming very, very harmful to the environment because you're so much overfeeding it, so much controlling the water quality and stuff in the environment that you're keeping the fish farmed. Fish ranching is a much better plan to increase species population and try to put back those numbers back into the wild. So that would be like fish farming is growing salmon in a pen for their whole life and harvesting them and eating them, which means that you're having to feed them up until they're big enough to eat, which means that all that food and all the extra waste and all that is just messing with your water quality in that area. You end up with pretty much with this dead zone around that area where that farm is in the water because there's so much over nutrients. It causes that eutrophication stuff that we talked about. But the fish ranching is growing and hatching them from eggs, raising them, for the first couple years till they're maybe the size of your hand, not even that, a lot of the time, a couple inches, and then released into the water column so that, so many die when they're little, that increases the population rate because you guarantee that they survive that first couple years, and then more can be harvested when they return. So again, like I said, it's a lot of memorization. Go through and memorize, be able to give me examples of advantages and disadvantages of aquaculture. And so this is what I was talking about, the risks of marine aquaculture. There's a lot going on. I was focusing on the sewage problem quite a bit. Escape is a huge problem. They're messing with traditional populations, so then you have this influx of new genetic material which messes stuff up. Controlling predators, you're ending up hurting local species because they're just doing what they do, so on and so forth. So that's a big problem. More sustainable aquaculture, these are some solutions. And again, like I said, one of the best solutions right now is to move toward the fish farming, to move toward aquaponics, stuff like that. And then global food security. Again, if you grow local, if you eat local, grow your own vegetables in your backyard, it's much more doable than people think it is. Then you would have much less problems. You would save money, better for the environment, so on and so forth.